And of course, we're ready to get set with the Super Action Theatre, Mr. Gabriel Jude, the treasurer, of course, of the organization, and who will be joining us, sweet Mr. Stevaco Joseph, the president. Good morning unto you, sir. It's a pleasure to have you join us here this morning, as always.
It's always a pleasure being with you.
The pleasure is all mine. For persons who are not aware, just share a little with us who you are and actually how you became part and parcel of the Super Action Theatre.
My name is Gabriel Jude. I'm born and bred in Soufrière. I had interest in the Super Action Theatre from very young, back in the early 1980s. So I joined the group in 1985 after observing the movements from rehearsals at the then Soufrière Primary School, which is now the special ed school, which is where they were rehearsing at the time. So I'd go around the rehearsals. I got interested in what they were doing, and I joined the group in 1985. So I've been around for quite a few years with the Super Action Theatre. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that wealth of information. As we've also seen throughout the years, the memorial of John George Odlum. Last year, it was quite sentimental, and I am sure this year is of no difference as well. So you mind just speaking to us about that whole inspiration and why it's so important to keep his memory alive?
Well,
what's the storyline?
It would seem that there is a pattern of not observing our people who have made contributions that are relevant to our society. We allow the relevance to just fall away. That is what we thought was happening to Brother George. And having observed that Brother George himself refused to allow that to happen to those who went before him, we saw Brother George keeping vigils for Rosie Douglas and all other major contributors to the life of the Caribbean, particularly the political life of the Caribbean. George always kept a vigil for those who had gone before him and had contributed to the progressive development of the Caribbean region. We participated in some of those vigils with him, and we felt it necessary that he should also have these vigils done for him. I mean, if he was the one orchestrating it on behalf of others, it is quite unfair that it should be left, that he should be left rather, without this same recognition himself. And so the Super Action Theatre took it upon themselves to observe Brother George's anniversary every year in whatever way we can. There are years when we celebrate and the public knows nothing about it. There are times we have in-house forums just among ourselves. There are times we bring it out to the public, as we did last year and this year. And this year in particular, we have decided that we will deal with the student population. So instead of a public vigil for everybody, we are going to focus on the students' population instead. So we will have the vigil on Friday, the 26th. The correct date is the 28th, but because it is falling on a Sunday, it's a bit difficult to get people together then. So we are celebrating the Friday, where we can get the school students from the Soufrière Basin, all the primary schools, and the secondary school. We will gather at the Soufrière Primary from 10 in the morning to 12. Our guest speaker for that forum will be Dr. Anderson Reynolds, who has written extensively on the ideas and life of Brother George. And he will share with the students on that day on the theme, the relevance or significance of Brother George ideas to the realities of today. So that will be the focus for this year, on the students, to bring the youth into the idea of celebrating our heroes, celebrating our people, because we have a lot of heroes that are unsung, who have contributed and we don't celebrate them, you know. And we don't want to allow that to happen to Brother George. And that's one of the main reasons why we celebrate Brother George. Coincidentally, when we celebrate Brother George, we also celebrate Wadada, who was a member of the Suffrage Action Theatre. He is the first member of the group that I know who passed on while being a member of the group. And so we keep this vigil every year to honor the memory of Wadada. And of course, you know, these things require time, energy, and finances as well. And because of that, to reduce the effects on the group's purse, we celebrate the two together. So we celebrate Brother George and we celebrate Wadada at the same time. Yeah? So hence the reason why we bring the two out together. They're not the same date. Wadada is October and Brother George is September. But we bring the two together so that we have one forum. That way it reduces the need for time and it reduces the need for spending.
Thank you so much. At this very moment, I would like to welcome the president himself, Mr. Stevaco Joseph. Good morning to you, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, Super. Good morning, Sanusha.
How do you feel today?
Well, I feel great. I feel great. I'm not in the business of being late, but I had some issues with the time. Although I was corrected, but I still kept the wrong time in mind. So I'm here, and I give thanks for being here.
And it's also a pleasure to have you here as well. As we continue the conversation, Mr. Jude made a mention of the observance, which is actually taking place at the Suffrage Primary School, connecting it on not just the community level as we've seen in the past, but trying to put it through the school system. And I think it's a great initiative, if you ask me. Maybe you can allow for some expansion.
Well, every year we try something different. Mm-hmm. The last time it was open forum at Old Trafford bus terminal, and we had the honor of having His Excellency Ambassador Peter Lansico as our guest speaker, and we were graced with the Venezuelan ambassador as well. So it was a wonderful session. This time we have decided that we will take it to the youth. And so we have invited the schools in the Education District 8 to listen to a lecture by one of our most prominent writers right now, Dr. Anderson Reynolds, who will be lecturing to the students tomorrow morning.
In your humble opinion, do you think, and I know we've had a discussion in the past and it continues to be a burning issue, do you think enough has been done to really reach the margin where SANT is concerned and disseminating information and all efforts in preserving the true meaning and culture of our tradition?
Well, honestly, enough is not being done. Those that are doing are the same ones who have been doing over the last 30, 40 years. And there seems to be a reluctance on the part of those who are able, including our institutions, and both public and private, to put resources into this type of activity, despite the fact that they are aware of the benefits. And the benefits are not solely financial. I mean, it's the benefits are also in terms of what type of a society you develop. If you're going to develop a society that has no regard for those who have contributed, that have no regard for the ideas that those who do the thinking have brought forward, then that society does not develop in a very positive way. And when it does not develop positive, it affects you in the private sector, and it also affects the public sector. So whichever way you look at it, it is necessary that such programs be funded. But there is a reluctance. So it's my conclusion that enough is not being done, and that the burden is left to the few who take it up as a vocation, as something from within, yeah, as something of personal conviction to carry forward that work. It should not only be left to those who have that personal conviction. It should be something that is entrenched in the society, that becomes part of the society, that becomes the way of life of the society, that becomes a subculture of the society. And that's the only way that the society can benefit from that work in the way that it ought to benefit.
Okay. Still looking at community involvement. What is the response, to the planning of this memorial?
Well, it's difficult to measure the response before the activity is done. I've spoken to two persons who were listening to us on RFI last night, because we were on RFI with Jolly Josie, and the response from them was good. But of course, I don't have a means of gauging the exact population that was listening at the time. I would assume, as experience allows one to, that the persons who usually listen to these types of programs were listening, because it becomes a matter of habit. It becomes a matter of orientation. And so I would think that those who are oriented that way were listening, and that they would have appreciated what was presented last night.
And also there is a shift in society towards the negative. You see, if you want to create a particular behavior, you devise a policy or a means to developing that type of behavior. For example, they want us to adhere to or take on foreign or American culture. So what do? They bombard us daily via all mediums of communications to psychologically prepare us to take and absorb what they want us to absorb, right? Now, if we want our people to absorb a fundamental understanding of our culture or our cultural tradition, or to create a new way of thinking, what do? We engage them via all mediums that are possible, bombarding them on a daily basis with the projection that we want to, or the objective that we want to accomplish. And question is that happening? Do you see we have interesting discourse on radio and television on a national level? Do you see we have debates among schools on a regular basis discussing the ideas of Brother George or discussing policies of government? Do you see we have clubs and youth organizations coming together, organizing forums? Well, there was a time when that was happening, because you see, we had a reading culture. We had a culture of discourse, And so that's why I say there is a shift now, and it's more towards the negative aspect of the scale than rather to the positive. So again, I want to reiterate, if we have a particular objective, whether it is in the educational, social, whatever area, we have to be clear about it and take the necessary measures to project what we want, what we want the outcome to be.
Not too long ago, a friend forwarded a video to me that, if my memory serves me right, I forwarded to the Suffrage Action Theater and other online groups that I associate with. And interestingly, the title of that video was "The Glorification of Stupidity."
Wow.
Yeah. And as Vaco spoke there, that's what came to mind, that stupidity is glorified. Yeah. So you go somewhere and whoever speaks the loudest seems to be the one who is popular. But you examine the content of what the loudest speaker is saying, and there's no content. It's all stupidity. It's just the showbiz, the loudness, the showing of yourself, There's a song that captured this very, very well. Vehicle. So you move around trying to watch yourself, instead of trying to develop yourself and project something which is sensible. Those who attempt to project something sensible either they are categorized according to the particulars and the partisan ideologies, or they are totally set aside. You know, they're not allowed the space to bring forth their message. They are ignored. Yeah? And then we wonder why the society goes in the direction that it goes. But if you're not allowing for discussion, that discussion must always be politically correct, that people must say what you want to hear, then you stifle the development of any alternative ideas. You stifle creation. And therefore, you live in a society where one set of people have one set of ideas, no matter how obsolete or outdated it may be. But these ideas are there, and eventually the society faces decadence because nothing new comes up, because they're not thinkers. You know, I mean, if there is no dynamism in your thoughts, you're not a thinker. Something must change, something must adjust, because everything else around you is changing. Change is the only constant. But instead, we listen to people who have no ideas, who only know how to survive by being parasites. And they are the ones who are given forums, and they are the ones who are listened to.
And in addition to that, which is why I stopped going to meetings that are called by organizations in Soufrière, like the SRDF and the political parties, when they call people to come and give their ideas, because when you speak your truth, you are labeled. All right, you're labeled. You are either a hypocrite, or you're flamboyant, or you're étoilite. You're Labour or you're UWP. And it is not about the substance of what you're saying. All right. For example, I have taken on the initiative of every day posting an idea or thought of Brother George. I will be doing that until the 28th. This morning I forgot. I was so busy. And so I posted something about Brother George's reaction to the coming in of KFC to St. Lucia. Now, I do not know if I touch on the eating habits of the particular individual, but what did he do? Instead of reacting to Brother George's words or what he was trying to advise his government at the time, he called me a drunkard, well, I'll not use the word. I said what everybody said, a salop. Yeah, and he said, I do not know what I'm talking about. You know, so that's the kind of mentality you have in the society, in the country. When you try to engage people in discussion about things, they either see you as not being on their side, or they attack you personally. And so based on that, I don't go to forums anymore, although there was a session that was called by the Honorable District Representative to deal with the waterfront and the DSH situation. GPH. I would have liked to have been there because I have a lot of things to say about that. I have a lot of questions to ask. But I told myself, don't go. Don't go, because they will label you. They will label you a functionary of the other side. And I've always said to people, when it comes to Soufrière and politics, Soufrière is the fundamental concern for me. When I speak, I try to look for truth. I try to look for facts. And that is what I try to share with people. So we must get off this situation where we are denying people of their voice because they do not share our specific way of seeing things. We should allow different ways of seeing. That is a big battle right now in the US. That's a big battle.
It's the battle in the world right now.
Yeah, it's a big battle
with the
to
East versus the West.
allow people's expression, to allow people to have their voice. All right? And so you see, that's where we are. It's an international struggle.
And it flows back to the very ideas of Brother George, that we should bring in the best brains of the country to help find a way forward for the country and develop the country. And George is not saying that now. I mean, we're celebrating his 22nd year of death. So it's not today he was saying that. But it's as relevant today as it was then. You know, that we should bring the best brains of the country together to bring the country forward. I mean, how many engineers do you have in St. Lucia? How many political scientists do you have? How many economists do you have? You know, how many financiers do you have? You know, how many skilled people do you have that you can split them so rigidly within two camps that if the one camp is in power, those from the other camp should not make any contribution. They shouldn't be allowed. They shouldn't work. Their mouths disappear. They shouldn't eat. You know, when the other side comes in, the same happens. Those who are on the previous side are sacked. The contributions are now deemed worthless, you know. And you try to understand, how can a small country like that split the small qualified workforce that it has so rigidly along party lines that they are denied their contribution, they are denied their economic sustenance, simply because the side that they appear to follow is not in power? How does that make sense in such a small space, you know? So there is a need to move away from this thing of blocking people's views because the view is not yours. It may well be that the view the person is giving that you are not listening to is the very solution to the problem that you have. But you don't know it because you haven't even given him the chance to articulate, and therefore you've not heard what it is that he has to say. You know, it's utterly ridiculous. I mean, look at what it is causing. One party comes into power, they present a manifesto. From that manifesto, the plans of how the government will operate will be derived. Yeah? Within 5 years, that government can even implement a quarter of what is in that said manifesto. But if that government loses the next election, the next government that comes in have a totally different manifesto. Anything that was started is stopped. A road was started, the road is stopped. It deteriorates. If they decide to continue that road, then we have to start from scratch. If they decide not to continue that road, the scratch from which we're going to start will go further. Yeah. Simply because parties change. Why can't we have a long-term plan of direction for the country that whatever party comes in will stick to, even if they may tweak here and there, but there is a central direction in which we are going. But that's what all the governments that have made progress have done. That's what Cuba is doing. That's what Traore is doing. That's what all of the governments that have been able to move their country in a direction of progress have had a strategic plan going 15, 20 years. Even if within the plan there are tweaks here and there, but there's a focus, there's a direction in which you are going. It can't possibly be that every 5 years your complete focus is going to change. That one government decides we're going to have a public-private partnership to build an airport, and that the airport is going to pay for itself. Within 5 years, a totally different plan appears. Now the airport must not pay for itself. We must take a loan to pay for the airport. You know, one government comes and say, we are building a new hospital. We're going to build it on that spot. Hey, this is what we're going to do. Within 5 years, the next government comes and say, break down this structure. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to go back to the old building, and we're going to work from there. You know, and it spans 15 years to get a hospital done. We still don't know whether the hospital is going to be completed.
400 million plus.
Something that was initially going to cost 2 million. It metamorphosed into what has cost 400 and something million. You know, nobody's going to go to jail, nobody's going to go to court. How can a small country like that operate in that manner? And these were the things that Brother George was talking about, that everybody wants to crucify him over, you know. But the persons who are crucifying Brother George were crucifying him because they want to operate in that way, because they're not about progress for the country. It's about them and their cohorts. And that's why the glorification of Brother George is not there. It's not part of their agenda. It is the damnification of him that is part of their agenda, because what he says, they don't like to hear it. But it is the truth. If you open your eye, you can see that it is the truth. That if you continue to go in that direction, that's not sustainable for a small country. Eventually, we're going to be nose deep in debt. And who's going to pay the consequences? Our children and grandchildren. Because those who set the path would have been dead. So reminding persons of the ideas of Brother George and how it conflicts with this direction that we're going in that doesn't seem to be sustainable and doesn't seem to lead to a development and growth path for the country should be continued. And that's why Suffrage Action Theatre makes the efforts. And if hatred be our lot in attempting to do so, then that burden we must bear.
Thank you for that sharing. We have Sheldon Lionel. Usually we listen aloud. Once, yes. Lucky says George Odlum left us September 28th, 2003.
Yeah,
Yes.
22 years ago.
Yes, indeed.
And Wadada was 14 years ago, October 12, 2012.
If I were to agree with you for sure, Mr. Jude, some valid points in truth. And I think a lot of the times we tend to give our attention to the wrong things, but then do not despair, continue the work that is being done. And I think a lot of persons are listening, even not the majority, but then quite a few persons are actually listening and having the president and the treasurer here. I am here to ask, I mean, on the personal front, what does this whole occasion means to the both of you? I mean, personally.
For Wadada, it means for me true community spirit. To the best of my recollection, Irvin, Wadada saw Alexis was involved in the community largely on a voluntary basis. He served as a member of WASIN. He served as a member of Nat Youth. He served as a member of the Youth and Sports Council. And all of that on a voluntary basis. And he was a guy, whether he volunteered for the position or he was elected to the position, he gave you 100% of his expertise. So that is one of the things I took from Wadada. For George Odlum, it's a lot. As a matter of fact, I consider George Odlum to be my political education professor. A lot of what I've learned about politics and my love for reading political material came out of listening to George Odlum. George Odlum ideas appealed to me. His was a clarion call for a new progressive society. We are still calling out for a new progressive society. The way that things are being done right now with the venom of partisan politics is not healthy for our country. It is not good for our country. It will not take us to the next level. We are wasting time doing nothing. George Odlum stood in defense of the poor, the powerless, and the downtrodden. Suffrage Action Theatre have always been about that. In our skits, in our poems, when our drums talk, we talk about the oppressed, we talk about the poor, and we talk about the downtrodden. George Odlum was a quest for social justice, racial equality. And I know George would be pissed off with this thing about this racist thing that they started about white man being prime minister and so on. George would be pissed off about that because his was one of racial equality. George was one for social justice. And Brother George was an active proponent of the new politics, the foundations of which he deemed to be people-centered. A lot of these phrases that was in the lexicon or the jargon of our politics are no longer there. People-centered governance, mobilization of the grassroots. You're not hearing that. You're not hearing these things anymore. All right? Self-reliance, unity. That was Brother George. That was Brother George, a fervent advocate for national unity. And I think Brother Jude will agree. That's what we are proposing right now. We are proposing that this biting, this hatred brought about by partisan politics is retarding our development. It is evident in so many things. The brother tried to discuss it a while ago when he gave the example of St. Jude's. That's retardation. 15 years, 400 million plus. And that happens simply because of the hatred in partisan politics. Because all what was necessary was the leadership of the two parties to come together, mobilize the people, seek to resolve the matter to save us this wastage. So Brother George would stand against these things. All right. I know for sure there's lots of things that are happening now in the nation that Brother George would stand against it. He would bring fire and brimstone. Fire and brimstone. Another point that I missed is this. You see the big C word, corruption. Brother George have no time for this. He has no time in his circumference, in his space for people who even suggest corruptible behavior. Corruptible behavior. And so for me, that's what it is for these two brothers that we seek to always try to remember them, remember what they stood for.
Thank you, Vaco.
Yeah, my own personal relation with Wadada, God rest his soul, he was a brother at heart. You know, sometimes you find yourself in situations where family becomes less important than friends. That you can't rely on family, but you can rely on friends. Yeah. Wadada was one of that type of person. That as a friend, you could rely on him at the crucial moments. And generally within Suffrage Action Theater, that's the spirit that exists, that we can rely on one another. But it's a subculture that we have cultivated. Yeah. So I got that from the brother. He was a brother that was willing to share. You know, some people know something and they think if they tell you that you're going to be better than them. Wadada was not like that. If he finds out some information about something, some knowledge, the knowledge was shared. Generally, that's how we operate within Suffrage Action Theater. I mean, an article appears somewhere, something, it's of relevance, we bring it to the group, we have a discussion. So everybody in the group is exposed. And so if a conversation ensues, that you can put in your 2 cents because you have done some reading, you have done some discussion. We share. And that's how we grow the group and we develop the intellect of our membership. As with Brother George, coincidentally, he's also my political educator. I listened a lot to Brother George from, as a little boy, my father used to take me along with him when he was going around political meetings, something which I myself have not done as an adult. I don't like going around political meetings. I don't follow political campaigns because of the division that it creates. But as a little boy, I went along with my father, and particularly to listen to Brother George. Yeah. And all the ideas that Brother George championed at that time are still ideas that I see relevant to our current levity. We see the world moving in the direction of the ideas that Brother George was talking about. We see it happening in Cuba, we see it happening in Venezuela, we see it happening in Iran, we see it happening in Burkina Faso. We see the world moving in a direction of cooperative living, of solidarity, of helping one another, of anti-corruption, of freedom of speech, of developing the poor, of developing infrastructure to create growth within countries. We see the world moving in that direction, particularly that part of the world referred to as the global south, which is the undeveloped, developing parts of the world. So Brother George made a personal impression on me in that regard. I was also impressed by his dedication to the arts. and the culture. We saw it with regards to the wake vigils that he kept for other prominent figures in the Caribbean who passed on before him. And that in itself singularly justifies Suffrage Action Theatre doing a vigil for Brother George as often as we can. So these are two brethren that made a contribution directly, personally, and group-wise, and community-wise. Brother George, I think that his last public address was done with the Suffrage Action Theatre, because I don't know of any public forum that he graced after gracing the Suffrage Action Theatre 2023
Open
University Forum. And I remember very well his statement that we do too much partying and too little working, that we need to work hard and then play hard, both at the physical level and at the intellectual level. God rest his soul.
Thank you so much for that. We have Sheldon posing, was George political policy prevented him from being prime minister?
Well, some people say that. This is not my conviction. I don't think it is George's political ideas that prevented him from being prime minister. I think that the country was not prepared for the direction in which George wanted to go. And I also think that those within the politics who understood where George wanted to go and saw that it was not in their benefit to do so, orchestrated his downfall. That is what I think.
Well, I would like to invite Sheldon to come and purchase the books from Dr. Anderson Reynolds on Friday. Dr. Anderson Reynolds have this wonderful book, Sheldon. It will help you understand and clarify what you want to know. The book is entitled, They Call Him Brother George, Portrait of Caribbean Politicians by Dr. Anderson Reynolds, all right? He will be in Sufra on Friday to do the lecture, so you could get a copy. He also have another book that is very interesting for you to read as well. It's called In No Man's Land. In No Man's Land. These two books, I think, will give you a very good understanding about Brother George, but particularly this one. There is that, as a matter of fact, they deal with that question in this book about it. And I think I share the sentiments that Brother Jude shared. One of the things they try to do to Brother George here in this country is this try to demonize him. Yes? I remember, and we didn't even have AI yet. And they were using tricks already. At the time, Brother George had never been to Cuba. But here there was a picture of him and Fidel, I think, at an
in front of a cow.
A cattle farm. And they said to our farmers that this is what will happen. When Brother George becomes prime minister, if he becomes prime minister, he will do like what is happening in Cuba. If you have two cows, he'll take one and give it to, or whatever the case may be. So there was that thing to demonize him. Even when he was restless within the St. Lucia Labour Party, they called him devil. They called him devil. So they demonized him, but his advocacy is still there in the many pages of the editorial of the Crusader newspaper. In many things others have said about him, there is a lot of information to think. But I don't think, I agree with Brother Jude, I don't think his ideas was what prevented him. I think there were other mitigating factors that prevented him in this regard. I don't think his party really wanted him, because don't forget, within the SLP, there was contending views, you know. The SLP was not a homogeneous core of ideas these people had, you know. There were contending views. There were the kind of a bourgeois class within the SLP, you know. There were those who from the lower strata that was more towards leftist ideology, as they call it, and those who were still conservative, like Alan Weezy and them. So that's how I can respond to that. But Brother Sheldon, please, you would be very happy if you could get these two books from Dr. Anderson Reynolds. And there are many, many other books. There is Rick Wayne has 3 of them. Yeah. Martinez Francois is interesting because both of his books seems to talk about George Odlum, and they look at both the good and the bad. So you get a kind of a reasonable analysis. All right, and don't forget when you're reading, the writer has his biases. All right, so Martinez Francois have villain or hero, and that is about Brother George.
There's Butchers versus Caesar.
There's the Butchers and Caesar. I forgot the title of this book. Yeah. And Rick Wayne has several. All right, it will be All Right in the Morning, Lapses and Infelicities, which is the most recent one, and also Peter Josie, Shattered Dreams. So there are a lot of material from St. Lucians about the politics of St. Lucia, and you could get a glimpse of Brother George in it. And that could help you answer the question instead of us telling you what our views are. You could get other views as well.
Okay, thank you so much. It is now 10 minutes moving up to the hour. Let me just reach out and say thank you to all those of you who are actually sending in your comments, your concerns, whatnot. We have CBA Jabartis. Thank you, Vaco and Sat, for keeping these memories alive and for the honor and respect given.
Thank you, Sister CBA.
CBA, a past president of the Suffrage Action Theatre.
Yes, indeed.
Give thanks and praise.
Looking ahead, how does the theater plan to continue honoring, the local culture figures?
Well, as I mentioned to you earlier, that this work is a work of heart. You understand? It's something you do because there is a certain conviction within you to do it. Of course, one may ask somebody to volunteer their time. It's a bit difficult to ask somebody to volunteer their money, particularly if that person has responsibilities, family responsibilities, etc. So financing this type of projects becomes a serious issue. And unfortunately, I don't want to go that route, but I have to. It's one of the issues that we have had with the Suffrage Foundation, that we think that as an institution in the Suffrage area that has a mandate, a vision of developing and preserving culture, that there isn't a sufficient focus on financing activities that help to accomplish that goal of the foundation. And that's the simplest way in which I can put it. So we are trying our best to do this by attempting to develop a young cadre. That is very difficult to do because what you find happening because of the economic condition of the country, that young people have to be moving around. So you may have a cadre this year, and next year you lose 5 of them because they have to go to school in Castries or in VA4, they have to live by family, or they can't get a job in Suffrage, so they have to migrate to Castries to work. And so you lose them, and it's difficult to keep a cadre together unless you can find young people who can get their sustenance of their livelihood in Suffrage, who will remain in Suffrage, and therefore the continuity can be maintained. So it's a very difficult work, but we are doing the best that we can with it. At the moment, we have just lost our male leader of the youth division of the Suffrage Action Theatre because, again, economic circumstances, the need to develop himself. He had to move to meet family overseas in order to be able to pursue his education and his career. And you can't ask him not to do that. In fact, the Suffrage Action Theatre promotes that our young people should educate themselves and move forward. So this sort of stuff happens. And
Blossom is in Vieux-Fort School.
Well, Blossom is in Labrie because she's going to school in Vieux-Fort. So she's by family in Labrie. We have not lost her. We hope we don't. But you can understand the difficulty in asking her to be at school in Vieux-Fort, living in Labrie, and to be in Suffrage. It's very difficult. So this type of thing retards the work. It's difficult to attract other young persons who want to make a livelihood out of the arts, but who cannot really make that livelihood because they try to develop themselves, but cost becomes an issue. And several groups that have attempted to develop in Soufriere that we have connected to a Soufriere Action Theatre to assist in their development have fallen by the wayside because of that. Because they can't get initial outlay to assist them. They put a play together. Monku Barrel will charge them $3,000 to $4,000 just to use the space. If they raise $6,000 from that production, how do they share it between 9 and 12 of them? It becomes very difficult. And so they drop off. They have to go and find other means of sustenance. They cannot sustain themselves within the artistic environment, so to speak, within the cultural field. And so that becomes very difficult.
Yeah, we have tried. Yeah, Cabrina, we have tried. It's hard. It's hard work. For example, the Flobagaya Awards, and I'm not just talking about the present board of the foundation. A lot of them were there when we did the Flobagaya Awards. They did not see the wisdom in helping us sustain this thing. That was a program that was honoring the wonderful people in our community that had done something tremendous or marvelous for the community, keeping tea boutique for decades, contributing to the flower festivals. People like that we were honoring through the Flobagaya Awards. It was necessary to honor these people because they were the unsung heroes. They were the ones that would not get the big national awards come Independence Day and so on. And I do not know why none of the boards of the foundation saw wisdom in keeping something like that, sustaining it, helping SAT sustain it. So we have tried. We continue to try, but we can only do what we can within the given circumstance.
There is a glimmer of hope from our last conversation with the foundation. We won't hold our breath, but we will keep hope and see whether promises made can be fulfilled in the direction to preserve the masquerade, the Jabdewa. So we'll see how that works. And we will report to the community whether this short holding of the breath was worth it. But there is a glimmer of hope, and we hope that something comes out of it.
Thank you so much for that. And I do hope as well, there is a light at the end of the dark tunnel, Sibia says, respect due to SAT for keeping community animation and development alive and well. If I am not mistaken, SAT is the only group left from all of the Caribbean Community Theatre Group.
Well, I don't know if we are the only one left, but I know
I won't be surprised.
Among the few that are left, and I assume that the brother who is commenting there have some links. Oh, that's UCBA commenting. Yes. Okay, so UCBA would have the knowledge of the ECPTO and the Popular Theatre Movement.
The ECPTO is Eastern Caribbean Popular Theatre Organization.
Yes. And the Teat Pepla movement in St. Lucia, that was part of that movement. I think SAT remains the only popular theatre group in St. Lucia from that time. I would not know for the Caribbean if we're the only one, but I know that we are among the few.
And I think Kennedy Boots-Samuel alluded to that in his tribute to Mabla.
Okay, and she did say, well, thank you, Lucky, for tagging me. I do hope many persons will get to hear this program. And I'm making an appeal as well, too. It's not too late. You could always go back, follow the link, tune into the program, and whatever concerns you may have, maybe hopefully you can approach SAT and they can bring it to rest. Lucky did say, George Odlum impacted my life up till now. I continue to keep his memories alive in my heart. Charlo Simon. Thank you to the pioneers of our culture, SAT, for preserving and uplifting our African and St. Lucian heritage. Well done. And again, Sibia did say SAT is the only one left in the Caribbean. So sort of justify that.
Okay.
Yes.
Just a message to Luki. Luki, Jarok anniversary is coming up November. It'll be a year since we buried Jarok. Okay? Just a note.
Yeah, thanks, UCBF, for clarifying that. So that's another heavy chain that we have to be pulling to to keep the ECPTO last link alive. Yeah. Well, let's hope we succeed in that endeavor. We are doing our best.
It's actually 11 a.m. in Service and Ocean Eastern Caribbean. And let me just recognize the lateness of our president. So a few more minutes to spare. Before we
it's
leave,
very unlike my president to be late.
Circumstances beyond his control.
Well, the confusion over the time, I don't know why it repeated, because that confusion was there on the WhatsApp page.
Yeah, BA
and I think
clarified
BA did make the clarification.
Yes.
I don't know at which point he went back
Just
to thinking
did,
that it was 11 o'clock. Yeah. But I can assure you that lateness is not a part of Stevaco. Vaco is the person that everybody comes to meet already there.
Nice. To you guys, Luki said, oh yes, I have, okay, plans, and you're part of it.
Okay.
So there is light at the end of the dark tunnel.
Okay.
It would be remiss of me before you guys leave not to have you all share on this, the wearing of the sashes that you are wearing boldly, which says we're repping for our Palestinian friends.
Palestine,
Yes.
our brothers and sisters in Palestine, the genocide that is going on, and we're not hearing much from our little St. Lucia, as if our people are disconnected from what's happening to our brothers and sisters in Palestine. But let who they say more on it.
Disconnection is not a difficult thing to absorb, because there is an effort to block all information on what the West is permitting Israel to do in Palestine. And I'm choosing my words carefully there, that Israel is being permitted to do that, because it can be stopped. It is known how to stop it. Proposals have been tabled on how to stop it. Many of those proposals have been accepted by the Palestinian side after they were compelled almost to accept it by the Western groups that support Israel. And yet Israel would then turn around and find a problem with what they were forcing Hamas to accept. So there is some level of deliberateness in what is going on. And one cannot miss it. Because if you're going to tell me, look, I give you 48 hours to accept that, and if you don't accept it, then there will be war. And then I bend over backward to accept within 48 hours, and then you come back and say, oh, it's not acceptable, and you are the one who is not accepting it. You say that to a child, and a child understands that this is madness. So it's difficult for me to understand how adults don't perceive that to be madness. I mean, let's try to put this thing in a nutshell. Somebody's homeless because he's been taken advantage of and he lost his home. Yeah. You decide, okay, I have a little house in the yard, so I'm going to allow you to live there. So you give this little space in your yard to that person. And then that person decides that, look, I want all the space. So that person knocks you out with a pole on the head, takes over the space, take your wife, claim your children. And your children and children's children have to continue living under the harassment of that individual whom you gave a home. That's what is happening in Palestine.
Good analogy.
Those Jews were spread out everywhere in the world when the Europeans who gave them Palestine as a home were killing them. Because Germany is still in Europe. It has not left Europe. Hitler was a German. Hitler was the one who committed Holocaust against the Jews. Although we can't use the word Holocaust for the other European countries, but they also run the Jews out of their countries. Because Britain had a mandate on Palestine at the time, a protectorate on Palestine, They decided through the Balfour Declaration to take a piece of Palestine and make Israel. The piece they took to make Israel is larger than the piece that they left to form the state of Palestine. But for some reason, the state of Israel was consolidated and the state of Palestine was not. Now, how do you understand that? Then Palestine has to be fighting for over 70 years to become a state on their own land, with Israel bombing them with 2,000-pound bombs that America is giving to Israel. The support for that genocide is given by the same British state who took the Palestinian lands to give to Israel, which they did not have a right to do. It was not their land. So that's what is happening. Now you think this man is ever going to tell you, this is your land, this is your house, that's your wife? It's not going to happen. So the only way is resistance, and it's by force. It have to be by force of arms for them to resist. And therefore, not to be in solidarity with this resistance means that you are yourself inhumane. You can't be a human being if you can accept that one country, after having been given part of an next man's land to live, can now be bombing the children, bombing the mothers and fathers, destroying the infrastructure, preventing them from getting water, shooting them if they go looking for food, and that you can support that to be happening to another people. You are yourself an animal.
And in addition to that, the controllers of mass media and social media do not want us to speak, because I'm going to read a short poem that I wrote, and Facebook blocked it. They didn't allow it to show. Simple poem. It's called Israel. Israel has overmastered United States of America's demonic schema. Israel's stratagem is heinous. Israel is villainous. Israel is nefarious. Israel's satanic blueprint is to malevolently eradicate the Palestinian people. And the malevolent leaders of the world are vile enablers. Facebook said I ain't showing nowhere. Facebook blocked that. They never printed it. They never allow it space. So they are still controlling our voices when they say we have freedom to express ourselves.
Thank you.
Long live Palestine.
Sharing.
Long
Yes,
live Palestine.
Right from the horse's mouth. Long live Palestine. Before we leave, we have a few comments. Gloria Leo. Well, just before that, Sheldon asked, are you getting your actors, or is it difficult doing so?
Well, we touched on that a little while ago, that it's very difficult because, I mean, you look at me, you look at Vaco, you can see that we are seniors already. Yeah. And we would like to rest and allow the young people to take over completely. But there's difficulty in that, because the ability for one to sustain themselves through the arts has been made tremendously difficult. One of the ways in which that has been made difficult is that our governments don't seem to see wisdom in creating space for actors. Now, if you're not a millionaire, you can build your own theater. So if you have young people who are leaving school, who studied theater, who want to make a career in theater, a bank is not going to give them a loan to buy land and build a theater. I mean, it's not rocket science. They have no collaterals to receive a loan like that. It therefore means that government must facilitate the creation of space so that these young people can live out the careers that they went to study, that the talents are innate in them to do. That space is not being provided. I am hoping with the breaking of grounds, or should I say rather the demolishing of the old Soufreton Hall, that whatever structure will be constructed there will create ample modern theater space that can fulfill that need. Because there's no reason why we don't have a mini cultural center in Soufriere. What's the reason? Why shouldn't we have at least 3 of these things spread out around the country? One in Vieux, one in Soufriere, one in Miko. Why not? Why do we still stick to this thing that we must have one big structure in the capital? Encouraging the brain drain from the what we refer to as the out districts to the capital. And then we wonder why our children run around disturbing the tourists. Because you can harness the talent. Those that have a talent, it can be harnessed because there's no forum within which they can sustain themselves through the talent that they have. So creating theater space is one of the main problems why recruiting of young people into artistic work is difficult. Because they can't afford the spaces and therefore they cannot sustain a levity in that field. The space must therefore be provided by the state.
And from the time of Walter François, we have been advocating for such space in Soufriere. Post Walter François, I think every other person have mentioned it either in the brochure or in the campaign leaflets, and to no avail. Nothing have happened. So we're still there. Nous vivons toujours.
It is in the strategic cultural report that the cultural committee on which Soufriere Action Theatre sat, that report was presented to the foundation and to the district rep. And I think every issue in that report has an association with the need for space. So if you can get a copy of that cultural report from the foundation, it will be interesting for you to study it. And this very problem is dealt with in there. The solutions are provided. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, you know. The things are there. The problem is implementation, because the political institutions that run the country don't seem to prioritize these things. We don't seem to understand that this youth empowerment thing that we are talking about is not simply about a certificate. And I recall mentioning that at a few town hall meetings that I went to, because I remember very well a series of programs, yes, that the ministry ran through NELP, I think it was, to qualify people as plumbers. And the people completed, they were certified as plumbers, but only 2 of them ever worked as plumbers. Why? Because the initial outlay to get their toolkits in order to be able to work as plumbers was not part of the plan. And so they fell by the wayside. Money is an important component in developing these things.
Definitely. And at this point, I'm so sorry that I have to cut this interesting conversation short. But here is what I'm going to do. We have so many comments coming in and so many
That's good. That's
left
good.
unanswered questions.
Oh,
We
boy.
have Gloria from London. You mentioned Jarok. Is he the fellow who used to walk around in Soufriere? I think he had some mental illness. We have
Yes, he is.
Sibia who said Gaza is earmarked as the playground for the rich. Remember the AI generated video? This was not a joke. The saddest of this, the IN and the world, well, the UN and the world continue to look on. Charlo says, good morning. We live in a globalized system of economic and systematic racism. As a Caribbean region, we must oppose this colonial ideology. Sheldon did say so true. Eusebio again said, Jude, the open space in Forbenier was promised to start for theater from the time of
Yeah, that's what Vaco was referring to over Walter.
Yeah, I'm happy these people are on and they are referring to this.
I'm actually going to bring you all back next week. Let's continue this conversation. And it would be more convenient as well to speak about the activity at the primary school.
Afterwards.
Postmortem.
The postmortem.
Okay.
Because we
That
could
would be
stay.
nice.
We could stay. here
So
the
can
whole
your
day,
production
definitely.
manager give you a few
So,
minutes for me to read out a summary here?
So I have my artists already there waiting
Okay,
patiently
okay.
for sure, but
Bless
then
the love.
quick.
No, it will not be quicker. So leave it as is. Tell me is important.
Well, thank you to
For okay.
88.5 for having us once again. Thank you to the audience online and to those who are listening to us via radio. Keep up the struggle, keep giving the solidarity. Viva Palestine, viva Cuba, viva todos los países que están en la lucha. Hasta la victoria siempre.
Thank you so much. Oh wow, I'm baffled. Thank you so much for that, Sat. And I'm feeling not sad to an extent, but then I would have loved to have you here for more dialogue for sure, because there is so much that has been left untapped. But then next week, hopefully, we can reach the masses, disseminate more information, and of course, that summary will definitely be aired Thursday, God's willing. Thank you immensely. Do not despair. Continue to shine the light even in the darkest hours. I say productive day to both of you guys.
Thank you for allowing us this time.
Be punctual, huh? Please. Blessings. Yes.
Pardon our appearance. We're making exciting changes just for you. At Massey Stores Mega,